I'm really excited to bring this word today. I've never preached out of the book of Leviticus. I've referenced it. I've pulled like verses out in order to kind of edify the message of what's going on. I've never just like preached Leviticus. Anyone here, you've heard a Leviticus message before? Awesome. Bobby, you're the most spiritual person in here. I love it. I'm so glad we have Bobby here. That's good. So I'm really, really excited because I'm a big fan of the Bible. If you guys haven't known or could tell, I love the Bible. I love every part of it, even the parts that I don't like about it, and the parts that I have disagreements with. And here's kind of the interesting thing is Leviticus ends up being one of those places I have a lot of disagreements with. Disagreements with my cultural moral thing. Like there's something in there that I go, that feels old, that feels ancient. Like, is there? And I want to address that. Let's look at that. Let's wrestle with that. If you guys remember back when we were going through Genesis, Pastor Greg brought a message on a man named Jacob, and Jacob has his name changed to Israel, which means one who wrestles with God and overcome. And so part of our faith, part of our identity as God's people is to wrestle with God, to wrestle both our spirituality, our emotions, just the things that feel like it goes against the character we've been told he is, or that we read that he is, and we go, how do I reconcile with this? And that's good. That makes this more than a book. And so in this, before I really jump into it, I might have a couple tangents today. I don't mean to. There's just a lot that I wrote some notes, but there's just a lot that kind of comes out of this. So Leviticus, for those who don't know, this is the third book of the Bible. What we didn't talk about, so last week we talked about the 10 commandments. What we didn't talk about is there's like a whole other couple chapters after the 10 commandments. And in this, what happens is Moses comes down from the mountain where he's given these tablets of these rules of law, of life. That's what we talked about last week. And when he comes down, he sees that the Israelite people who have been so worried of what's happening. When you read the story of Exodus, it says that they're at this mountain called Mount Sinai, and it looks like it's on fire, and there's thunderstorms around this. They're terrified. And originally, God wanted all of the Israelites to go up the mountain, and instead, what they find is no, Moses, you go for us. Which I don't blame them. If you saw a mountain on fire, you wouldn't walk up it. That's common sense. That's reason. Again, let's put ourselves in the Bible. It's a real thing. And so they go, Moses, you go up. We're okay if you die. And so he goes up as a mediator, gets this stuff from God, comes back down. The Israelites are still terrified. They're like, who is this God that we're trying? What does he look like? What does he do? What is all this stuff? We saw him split oceans and cause plagues and all this stuff. What is going on? And so they take all their gold, they melt it down, and when it cools down, it looks kind of like a cow. And they go, this must be what God looks like. And so they start worshiping it, and they're just confused. It's really confusing time. And even in this, this goes against some of the commands that God has already given at this point. There's no new commandment. It's just a lot of confusion. So this is a kind of one of these wrestle moments with the Bible. Moses comes down and then he goes, God, what are they doing? And he goes, here's what I want you to do, Moses. All the people who initiated the making of this idol, slaughter them. God kills his own people. And here's an interesting thing is the people who stand up to say, I'm going to go do that. God goes, okay, I'm going to make them my priests because they're loyal to me. And even though the command is really strange and odd, they still did it. And so this is where a group of people called the Levites come from. And so this is you guys are looking at me like, this is the Bible? Yeah, this is the Bible. This is why we got to read it all. This is a very interesting story. After this, Moses goes back up and God goes, I am so out of relationship with my own people now. This is like it's a little bit of dad kind of got a little too aggressive with you. And dad's like, you did something wrong. That might have been an overreaction, but here we are. Like, and so God goes, I need to build a place. Since my people won't come to me, I need to build a place where I can be with my people. So they started initiating a thing called the tabernacle, which is essentially like a tent inside of a tent, inside of like a courtyard. And in this, God goes, I can be in this inner tent, and then people can come and be in my presence now. And this is a really good thing. God's trying to create these avenues in which, hey, you don't need to make an image, you don't need to make an idol, you don't need to do all that stuff. I'm going to be with you and all this stuff. But they are having a problem with sin. They're having, they're in kind of like this tension here. And God goes, so now I have to create a way in order for us to actually be in relationship. Okay. All of this is really interesting, right? Or boring. I don't know. You decide. Here's one of the first things I wanna kind of start with here today is this is where the reason why we kind of skip over Leviticus, why we kind of move past this stuff, is it can get really confusing because it requires a lot of high level theology in order to start like diving into this. So theology is the study of religion, the study of God. You can keep the music off too now. Thank you very much. And so it requires a lot of work in order to figure out what's going on. And so one of the best things about us being Christians, our kind of larger chunk of denominational faith is called Protestant Christian. There's Catholic and Protestant. Protestants like us. And so one of the benefits is we have the New Testament and we go, oh, I don't need to read that. I got this New Testament thing and it all works out for me and we're all good. And so we kind of just skip over this stuff. But here's one of the things that I get really worried about is we hear things like the 10 Commandments and Leviticus and a lot of stuff we're going to talk about over the next month. And we kind of skip over it because it turns into this like, what would be, do you get, okay. How do I say this without, I don't want to sound like I'm putting down a religion or something like that. So the Mormon faith believes that this guy named Joseph Smith went out into the woods and he found these golden tablets along with a pair of very special glasses that he could read it. And then he interpreted those tablets and then that became the Book of Mormon. And so they were added in these tablets. It was, here's parts of the Bible that you know it that need to be taken out. And then here's extra chapters that I'm going to put in. And this is the Book of Mormon. That's how the Mormon faith started and then traveled from there. If we're really not careful, and I think most of us have been taught to read and understand the Bible in the same way that we hear that story of the Mormons and we go, oh, that's strange. But the same thing happened to Moses. He went up a mountain, got these tablets, came down and said, hey, God said this. Like without any other person going, are you sure, Moses? And then he just says, oh, and God told me to kill you. And then God told me to build tents inside of tents. And as you start reading at the end of Leviticus is like specific objects that need to go into tents. And then what we're going to talk about today is like, to us, it really feels like barbaric sacrifices. And we go, did Moses just make this up? And so if we read this, if we read Leviticus as like history books, we're really going to miss something here. If we read this like a narrative, like God is telling like a story of things that need to like be called back to later on, we're going to read this with a whole lot more like intention in which it was ever written for. And so if you guys didn't know this, the Bible is not a book, it's a library. Meaning it is a collection of a lot of different books and scrolls and letters. And inside is only about 43% of the what we would know as the Bible is a narrative structure. Like most of the books that you guys read, unless you're reading biographies or things like that, you're reading narrative, right? Harry Potter, narrative, whatever that new book that all females are reading right now, narratives, like, They're all narrative. So they're telling a larger story, and they're placing characters in that are going to come back and all this stuff. And so you read Genesis and you go narrative. You read Exodus, and up until Exodus 20, you go narrative. It's telling this longer story. It's a little bit history, but even if you read it as history, you're going to miss it too. Well, that's another day. But we get to Leviticus, and there's this hard stop because there's not a super easy transition, and it just goes, oh, legal contract. And that's how we're going to read Leviticus. It's a legal contract. It's God versus God's people, and not against the world. So we're going to read stuff that you go, well, that's not, how would I ever tell a friend that? It's not for a friend. It's for you. And then we're going to read things that we go, oh, that's for you. What do I even do with that? Like, we're going to read about like animal sacrifices, and like, so next week we're going to bring a bull in, and no, we're not going to do. Okay, so why don't we do that? But it's in the Bible. Well, we need to reason with the fact that we've been reading this wrong. So then some of these things that you go, oh, this feels really basic, or feels very like it doesn't fit our 21st century knowledge of things, of just general life and how life works. We're going to, next week, Pastor Natalie is going to be bringing a message on the causes of purity and impurity. And there's stuff in there about like female hygiene and things like that. It's like, these guys had no idea. Like, one, it's a dude making all the rules. And then two, it's just like, you did not know what was happening in this moment. You just knew a baby came out, and they're like, cut the thing that's tied to the mom. I don't know, like and so we read it with this like this 20th century 21st century perspective of, oh, we know math, we know science, we know we now live in a democracy where there's reason and freedoms of speech, and we're moving as a culture into more equality within cultures and races and sexes and all of this stuff. And you go, how do I read this stuff? Like, okay, my 4-year-old right now, we have a rule for him because we're out of potty training, but we're still in the phase that he's not like super great at wiping his own butt. So my son can go to the bathroom by himself, but, and my parents, you're laughing right now, you know, he can go to the bathroom by himself. He can do all of the things, and he keeps it like it's all great, but we still kind of like still right now have to do this. Hey, I need to look at your butt, because I got to make sure it's clean, buddy. Because if it's not clean, a rash breaks out. It's gross. He's going to, you know, like he's not learning cleanliness and all this stuff. If at 18, my 4-year-old son goes to the bathroom and then waddles out, pants around his ankles, and then bends over, I'm punching him. Like I'm real mad. I'm real mad at myself. I'm mad at him. How did we get to this point? Like I want you to look at that. Everything we're going to read over the next 3 weeks, we need to look at it from this perspective of this is a 4-year-old nation. And the reality is they're only a couple months old. They aren't dumb, but they don't have systems. They don't know what it means to be a people, a nation. Like what are our rules on farming and sharing of property? Who's in charge? What do we do? What do we worship? All this stuff. And so if God's expectation on us was to follow the rules at our infancy, that we now have different rules at our maturity, we have a problem with God, or we have a problem with us. And so if we read this as, oh, these are the rules, these were rules for 4-year-olds. But here's the thing. Here's what I want to catch. I promise I'm going to dive into this because I haven't even got to my first point yet. Here's the thing that I want us to catch. Was the intention of the rule for my 4-year-old wrong? What was it about? Cleanliness. Be clean. And let me be the one who helps you. I am the one who can. In fact, I'm the appropriate person to help you. another safe, trusted adult that I have told you you can trust this person can help you. Is that making sense? The goal wasn't that he was always relying on me. Actually, the goal was I'm showing him how to progressively do this on his own. Why? Because someday he's going to have to do it for his own child. And he needs to come back to, what did I do when I first? Oh, dad would, mom would, or trusted family member, trusted leader, trusted authority figure would help me learn cleanliness. Are we getting this? Okay. Leviticus 1. Okay. Leviticus 1, let's pull this up real quick. The Lord called to Moses from the tabernacle and said to him, give the following instructions to the people of Israel. When you present an animal as an offering to the Lord, you may take it from your herd of cattle or your flock of sheep and goats. The book of Leviticus, the origin of this, the original word, Leviticus is an added word. It just meant called out. It meant so this point where God is in the tent. They have built the tabernacle, but no one can go inside because everyone has sinned. Not even Moses can get inside. If you were to walk inside the center tent, you would die immediately. How did they find this out? Someone did it. And they were unclean. They had not done the work in order to be in the presence of God. There is work that we need to do to be in the presence of God. And so God, from the center tent, calls out to Moses. So this is what Leviticus, now here's the thing, is whenever it got translated into Greek and then translated to our English today, Leviticus just means about the Levites. Again, the Levites are the priests, the ones who followed God's word and were devout to what he was doing. And here's what I want us to be careful of, because like I said, we could read this book as about the Levites and not about God calling us out. So we got to catch ourselves really quickly and go, even in us understanding the infancy versus maturity, this still, what was trying to be said here. Here's what I want us to catch. We are called out to be brought in. So in this, we're getting these instructions, like we said in Leviticus 1, for a thing called offerings. Offerings are a way for us to take things that we've done wrong, things that we've messed up, we've fallen short, and to kind of reconcile that work so that now we can be in relationship with God. Offerings were meant to be really simple. We're going to read them as really simple here today, and we're going to come back around to a lot of this stuff. The word offering is a really interesting word because it's in our culture, it's tied to tithes here in the church, or like negotiations at like a car dealership. So for us, it's, hey, give me your money. And then at a car dealership, it's, hey, you want a Honda Civic? And this is, so when we hear offering, it's a very old word, and it's also a very weighted word in that way too. And so it's the problem is that whenever we hear this, even when we hear it in the church here today, especially when it's related to money, when Mari comes up here and she says, hey, I just want to encourage you guys in your giving today, in your offering, in your tithe, whatever you want to give to God, we can go, oh, here's a negotiation. I'm a bad person. Here's some money. Am I not a bad person anymore? And it's so much more than that. What I want us to understand is offering is a gift. Not a gift to ourselves. It's a gift to God. What it requires of us is that we wanted to give something to God. This is an interesting thing that we need to understand about offerings and us trying to bring ourselves in right standing with God, is it didn't start with, oh, I'm just so bad, I don't want to be bad anymore. It's, God, you're so good, I want to give you something. But in the same way that offering has kind of have a messed up word, the word gift has also kind of, especially our understanding as gifts is like Christmas and birthdays, which is somebody just brings us something and then there's nothing in return. And although you hear in the Christmas season, right, what's better than getting a gift? Giving a gift. It just feels so good to give the right gift. As a gift person, just give me gifts, okay? I'm not good at giving gifts, and I love getting gifts. Okay, so So next week, bring me a gift. Not at all. Here, it's not this like at the same time that it's not this exchange of resources and negotiation. It's also not just this like free thing. We should expect something from God as we're establishing a relationship. It's actually a little bit more like an engagement ring. Here, let me hold it with this, okay? So when Pastor Natalie and I, when we were dating, I decided really early on I wanted to marry this girl. And when I say really early on, like we were a month into our relationship, I was like, I'm gonna marry this chick. Like she's pretty cool. She so far puts up with my crap. A month in, which every boyfriend and girlfriend does. So like, I'm not saying us as an example. For some reason, we've worked out, right? So. And here's the thing. I grew up hearing that you need to spend 3 months' salary on an engagement ring, which like any of the women in here, you're like, you better make that 4. Here's the other problem: is I was an intern at a church, so I made $250 a month. So I didn't even know how I was going to raise up $750 for like a ring of like that. I'm just like, I like you. Can we just get married? Like that was like, I was 22. I was just like, I just want to get married, and other things. And, oh, we're not gonna be honest in church, okay? It's so but two really amazing things happened in order to get this ring. A new first time guest came to the ministry that I was running, and he worked at a jewelry store. And I told him my problem. He's like, I can give you a half off price of that equivalent value. And I was like, God bless, that's a deal. Let's go. And so I was like, I'm gonna get a $750 ring for $300. Like it's gonna be like choice. Like I got it. It's gonna be amazing. And then the other amazing thing that happened, because that $250 just went to like food and gas. So like I was like, okay, I can go to like ramen and eat like pasta with sauce. And then Natalie was kind of like my sugar mama. She like fed me like all that stuff anyways. And so I was like, I'm gonna be fine. Like I'll just not eat food. Like I could afford not eating some food, but I still got to pay for gas. Well, my car broke down, so I didn't have to pay for gas anymore. Like. So I was able to save up that money in a month. Like it was choice. Like I got this, and so like, but it's like there was a cost to get this ring. There was something in this, and so when I gave her this ring, there was a twofold to it. One, I want you to know I paid a cost to get this to you. Both in a lot of different ways. Insert whatever thought you want to have there. But the other thing was, when I'm giving you this ring, I'm making a promise that I am going to work. I'm going to be faithful. I'm going to be loyal. I, as a husband, will be a man of integrity, of honesty, of vulnerability. I'm going to be a leader and a follower. We're going to do this together. And then my expectation in her taking the ring was, I will do the same. Did she need to give me the ring in order for her? Like, did she need to go buy me a ring? Oh, now that she did that, now we got to do this. It's not an exchange of goods. Her agreeing to the gift I was giving her was just receiving it. This is what offering's supposed to be. So what I am saying is I am offering my life as a gift. Yeah. Natalie, you have all of it. And if I were to lose you, I would lose everything. Yeah. This is the intention of offering that we're going to talk about today. So we're going to skip into some things. So Leviticus 1-7 is all about this exchange. There's 5 different offerings that are go through these 7 chapters right here. The first 3 are known as fellowship offerings. Fellowship is a big Christian word for community, for relationship. We're just gonna do this type of stuff together, and not only that, a key part of fellowship and what Dwell Church is trying to do is regular community. So it's not community at convenience; it's community out of necessity. Okay, I'm gonna let that sink in for a second. So fellowship was about, hey, how can I get into relationship with God because I need it? Not only do I just want to give God something, but I need it for myself. These three fellowship offerings, when you read it, we're actually going to skip over the first one. We're going to come back to it at the end. But they all are, the reason why you can kind of pair them together is all three of them, whenever the offering is given, it says that there was a good smell that came from this offering, a pleasing smell that came from this offering. I want you to know that God is pleased when you bring an offering to him. When you say, God, I want to be back in right standing with you. The first step is, God, I just want to be in relationship with you. Before we start talking about how wrong of a person you are and all of this stuff and listing out confessional, stop. Do you want this? Do you need this? If you don't, quit wasting your money. Quit wasting your time. I don't know, bad church message maybe. I don't know. But here's the thing, what a waste of time and resources to sit in a room for someone to just tell you you're a bad person. You already know that. I don't know. Maybe some of you have better self-talk in your heads, but most of the people I've met, you get angry and you're like, why am I getting angry all the time? Okay, let's calm down. Okay. So these first two offerings, they're called the grain and peace offering. We're going to kind of partner them together. In this, there's no animals that are given. In the grain offering, it's just like how it sounds. They would bring corn or wheat, they'd ground it down, mix it with some oil, put it on a fire, and then it would turn into bread, and then they would eat it. Yeah, this is great. See, not all offerings are about spilling blood. Okay, some of them out of eating food. And so this is why. I had a pastor ask me why do we do these after parties and stuff like that, and I was like, because we're supposed to eat food together. We're supposed to do more than just sit in chairs and stare at me. And so the first offering was God, I want to eat with you. I don't want to just go to your church. I want to be in your home. I want to, and not only that, I'm going to bring something with me. I'm not just expecting to eat your food that you provide. I'm going to bring some food with me. Let's cook it together. Let's do some work together. You would take a piece of your hard work, the harvest that you labored over, and you would grind it down and give it to God. And not only that, he goes, I'm pleased with this. Go share it with other people in your community. What a beautiful thing. The first one we're going to talk about. The next one's called a peace offering. In this, we are pulling from now into some animal sacrifice. So any of my vegetarians or squeamish people, deal with it. Leviticus chapter 3. Let's look at this. The priest must present a part of this peace offering as a special gift to the Lord. This includes all the fat and the internal organs, the two kidneys and the fat around them, near the loins, and the long lobe of the liver. This must be removed with the kidneys, and Aaron's sons, these are the Levites, will burn them on top of the burnt offering on the wood, burning on the altar. It is a special gift, a pleasing aroma to the Lord. Okay. What? By the way, the rest of them are just as they get more intricate. Okay. So let's break this down a little bit. What makes this a peace offering? In many religions still today, and especially in those ancient societies, they would take the liver and kidneys out of both humans and other animals as sacrificial rituals to their gods. They would lay them out and they would use those in order to tell the future. So what God would do is he says, those things that other people all around you, these weren't distant lands. They were 100 miles away, not that far. They would later become enemy nations because of the friction between these two different cultures. He would say, okay, what they do is they take the liver and the kidneys and all of these entrails and they tell the future with it. I want you to burn it. Why? Because I want your peace not to be in how you can tell the future, but that you're with me now. I'll hold your future. Does that make anybody a little? Well, it should. It should. Part of the peace offering was to say, God, you hold it. You hold my future. You take it. and I will just find peace in my relationship with you. Really hard to do. Really hard to do when you only do it once a month. Okay, I'm gonna move on. The next ones so those are the first two. The next two are gonna be called atonement offerings. Atonement is another kind of fancy word, but atonement means not apart from God. Whenever I am atoned with God, I am in relationship with Him. So why would you need to do an atonement offering? You're not in relationship with him. You've done something very clearly against what he said for you to do. And some of these are really big things, and some of them we're going to read are not so big, but we're going to see God's perspective on the heart of the issue here. But this is the whole intention is making us at one, atonement, at one with him. Okay, so these are acts of separation that we've done that we need to now come into an offering with him. These are called sin and guilt offerings. These sin and guilt offerings, they require no participation on our part. So you would bring the tithe, you would bring the offering, and it would all be used for something. And so part of like the sin offering is you would bring it, and like the peace offering, you would pull the fat, you would pull the meat, you would do all this stuff, you would skin the animal, and then you would only on the burnt part of it, you would only burn sections of it, and then the rest of it was still like would be usable for like sandwiches. I don't know. Like it's meat, so I'm just guessing sandwiches, maybe pizza. But because it was a sin and guilt offering, all of it was bad now. So they would have to take that and take it outside of the whole camp. They'd have to walk through the whole camp, which at this time is like a mile to just get outside of the Israel camp. And then they would burn it there, not as another offering, but as this is so bad now, we can't even have it in our house. We can give the atonement to God, but then the rest of this, no one can touch. And they would let the fire burn all the way through the night so that there was nothing left over. This is what's so important about this is that atonement is about removal, not participation. Here's what I mean by this is a lot of us want to play a part in the removal of sin in our lives. In the same way that like when you break up with an ex and you realize how many things are like in your house and in your car that belong to that person. Anybody with me? You know this one. And have you ever, maybe some of you are with like your partners right now. And so like, don't look at them whenever you're like nodding your head. There's like a moment where you're still like, do I throw this away? Like, because what if we get back together? Like, and then I'm gonna say like I threw away your hoodie. And so like you kind of hold on to it, and then just like you get rid of it in stages, and then you end up like getting rid of it when you know like, and so instead of just going like gone. Like we want to kind of participate in the removal process of this. And all that this causes is just like a prolonged problem in your life, which is that you just won't let go. You just won't let it be removed. And what it actually ends up causing is accidental sins. So when we hold on to things that God has said, this isn't good for your life, and we go, can I let go in stages? And God goes, you can let go when you want to. But the longer you hold on to it, the more problems you're actually going to have. And eventually you're going to find yourself just bringing it right back into your life. God calls this unintentional sins. So when you read through the offerings, the sin and guilt offering, they're specifically in context of unintentional sins that you didn't mean to do, but you did anyways. So some of these would be like you made a promise to somebody and you didn't follow through with it. This is an unintentional sin. You didn't mean, and here's the caveat, if you meant to not do it, then that's just a full, you did something bad. But you just forgot. And he goes, hey, it was still, you had a duty to the person in which you gave your promise to. What did you put your name on? What did you say? I'm going to be in a relationship with you, and I didn't follow through on that. And he goes, it's an unintentional sin. God distinguishes these so that there's an understanding of the progress that can happen in our life. And so it's just, all of it is about, we're not intentional with the care of the things that God has in our lives. Okay, let's end it right here. We're going to end today with the first offering that I talked about. We skipped over this one. This is a fellowship offering, but it ends up actually being an atonement offering too. It's called the whole burnt offering. Whole burnt offering. Anybody heard of this before? Something like this? No? Okay, great. So I could say whatever I want. Read your Bible. Here, let's look at this. Leviticus 1:3-4 here. If the animal you present, this is the very beginning, all of this. If the animal you present as a burnt offering is from the herd, it must be male with no defects. Bring it to the entrance of the tabernacle so you may be accepted by the Lord. Lay your hand on the animal's head, and the Lord will accept its death in your place to purify you, making you right with him. So this whole burnt sacrifice offering, the reason why this is the first one and the reason why we're ending on it today is this covers all the offerings. Grain, peace, sin, guilt can all be covered by the whole burnt offering. But here's the requirement, Jarrett. This is a crazy one. You have to be able to let it all go. Every piece of it. So anything could have been a whole burnt offering if you were okay with all of it being sacrificed. It covers everything that you could have done. This one had to be, when you did an intentional sin, you had to do a whole burnt offering. You had to bring this and say, "This is I have royally messed up. I got to have something die in my place." At Dwell Church, we read the Bible from the perspective of looking for Christ in Scripture. All Scripture, not just New Testament, not the places where he talks, but in every part of it. So how are we going to translate today into this? We're going to do this. Christ is the offerer and the offering. That he embodies every piece of the offering, so much so that what we're talking about today no longer has to happen within our faith. This is so strong that God, who created this rule in order to bring relationship, said, you had to kill all of these animals to get to me, but now you're going to have to kill my son to stop it all. Paul in Romans says this in Romans 3. I want us to catch it. But now God has shown us a way to be made right with him without keeping the requirements of the law. As was promised in the writings of Moses and the prophets long ago, we are made right with God by placing our faith in Jesus Christ. And this is true for everyone who believes, no matter who we are, for everyone has sinned. We all fall short of God's glorious standard. Yet God, in his grace, freely makes us right in his sight. He did this through Christ Jesus when he freed us from the penalty of our sin. For God presented Jesus as a sacrifice for sin. People are made right with God when they believe that Jesus sacrificed his life, shedding his blood. This sacrifice shows that God was being fair when he held back and did not punish those who sinned in times past. For he was looking ahead and including them in what he would do in this present time. Oh, this is powerful. God did this to demonstrate his righteousness. For he himself is fair and just, and he makes sinners right in his sight when they believe in Jesus. I'm going to end right here. God has called us to live at a standard that is too high. It's wild. Next week, we're going to talk about this. And Paul says it's so high, everyone falls. This offering thing, it's too much. It's so hard. So many Israelites fail. They give up. Later on in the narrative parts of the story, they just fall underneath the influence of Persians, Babylonians, Philistines, like all these people. Why? Because it was hard to be the people of God. Guys, it's hard to be a Christian. It requires some work. It's hard to wake up on a Sunday morning and come to church. I mean it. I'm not, that's not a joke. It's not sarcastic. It's hard. I woke up late this morning. Like, I'm the pastor. It's hard. Like, that's the easy part. It's hard to read the Bible. It's hard to pray. It's hard to be honest all the time. It's hard to like believe in your marriage. It's hard to like, it's hard to control your anger. It's hard to like put your finances in a place. It's hard to like dedicate. It's hard to offer something that I've worked so hard for and to give it away for free. And God knows this and made the perfect example in his son Jesus.